Alright everyone, I am in a very good mood. Those of you guys who watched the recent Twitch stream, you guys know exactly why. So I thought that I would go ahead and put out a video sharing some important information about some really common mistakes that I see people making when it comes to enhancing. Things that I see brought up a lot when it comes to questions, and they're really things that I have to point out a lot to hopefully help people out and correct them. So because I see these things constantly brought up, I wanted to put out a video and really address some of the biggest and most common mistakes that I see people making when it comes to enhancing. So let's get into it, and I wanted to really get into 3 of them in particular in this video. I think that's all we're really going to have time to do. Obviously there's a lot more than 3, but there's a couple things that I wanted to focus on their own separate videos. So let's get into number 1 here, and this is a really big one. I get so many questions every single day about how I end up doing my fail stacking, and I'll tell you that a really big mistake that a ton of people make when it comes to fail stacking is they don't incorporate the right amount of items, and they typically only go with one, and that is like reblath boots from plus 14 to plus 15. And plus 14 to plus 15 reblath booting is very important. It is a crucial step in your fail stacking process. However, I will tell you that if you do a decent amount of enhancing, it cannot be the only part of your fail stacking gear setup that you have. If you're just doing a little bit, if you're only going to work on like one item quickly every so often, it's totally fine to not actually get like a setup of gear for fail stacking. However, if you're going to be doing a decent amount of enhancing, or you ever look at possibly doing it for profit in the future, you need more than just plus 14 to plus 15 reblath booting. That is not going to be enough. And generally speaking, a major rule of thumb when it comes to enhancing is the more gear that you have to work on, and this applies to both gear to fail stack, where your primary goal is to actually fail and build up fail stacks, versus actual gear that you're working on to succeed. The more of all gear that you have to work on, the better you're going to be able to optimize your enhancing, and the more value you're going to be able to get, the more money you're going to be able to make. When you have less gear, and especially if you're focusing on just working on one item in particular, that's generally where people make a ton of mistakes, and they lose out a lot of value, especially with the way that fail stacks work. Fixating on one piece of gear instead of working on multiple pieces where they're able to really optimize the fail stack levels that they use for different pieces of gear depending on what are the best ranges to use. So when it comes to basic fail stack gear, you're not just going to want, plus 14 to plus 15 boots, which obviously can go run to the church to D-level, but you're also going to want, the typical pry, duo, try, and, potentially, if you do this enough, of course, you're going to end up with tet, reblaths, and you might even eventually end up running into a pen one. Obviously, you don't really want that, but it doesn't matter if the boots are actually pretty much useless at pen. I mean, you can devour them to a 70 stack, but for a pen item, it's about as useless as it gets. That's not the point. The point is you get pens so rarely, and it's the fail stack levels that become so valuable. And if you know what you're doing with fail stacking, it doesn't even have to be reblaths. It can be so many other items. A lot of people like to use greens. You can even work on greens and sell them for profit. Regardless, you want to have a decent amount of them to work on, to make sure that when you do your enhancing, you always have the right option available to you. And obviously RNG is going to catch up, and occasionally you're going to get lucky on one enhancement level. You might be getting too many duos, you might be getting too many tries, things might be a little lopsided. You're going to have to make some corrections here and there, but give yourself options and don't make split-second decisions on clicking on pieces of gear that you know you're not supposed to do. If you develop a good fail stacking strategy, and I will definitely be putting out plenty more fail stacking videos in the future because it is a very complex topic to get into that cannot be covered in one video, but if you have a solid fail stacking strategy, you're going to be able to build your stacks for a good price. You're going to be able to click on the right gear at the right levels, and you're going to notice that it's working out a lot better than probably the way that you might be used to, where you're just kind of focusing on one item at a time. So really big mistake there is just working on plus 14, plus 15 boots. If you enhance a lot, you're going to need a much bigger setup to be able to do it properly. So that is a very big one right there. Now, let's get into another one. And speaking on fixating on one item, I think this is something that people really tend to do when they failed a couple of times and they're really trying to get a piece of gear to the next enhancement level, and they're just tired of failing one piece of gear. And it's a lot easier to focus on this when you're only working on one piece of gear. If you're working on multiple pieces of gear, a lot of the times you're not even thinking about it if you're failing or succeeding. You're just kind of going from one click to the next, and whatever happens, happens. But when you fixate on one piece of gear and you fail, sometimes you get frustrated, and it tends to lead to people using cron stones on enhancement levels that typically are not very good. And again, cron stones is one of those things where I could easily spend many videos getting into the details on what is really good to use your crons on and what is not. I think I already made one specifically about boss gear, but there's a lot to really get into with cron stones, and I'll tell you that there's 3 categories that I like to have for cron stones. There's one which is the best. And obviously, there's really going to be basically only one thing, maybe a couple that go into this category. Things like your T9 horse attempts, because even if you're on EU and you're buying the vendor crons for 2 million silver each from the blacksmith, it doesn't matter even if you're paying 2 million silver. Using 100 cron stones for T9 mounts is going to save you 250 million, so it's still going to be worth it anyway, and I believe it is the single-handed best use for cron stones. I don't think you can get a value of 2.5 million to 1 for cron stones anywhere else, but you've got other things that are really close, especially on NA, like distortions, and a couple of other things as well. And I like to lump the second category as not the absolute best, but things that are good and that you're going to make money from your cron stones. Like, you're going to get more than 1 million on NA or 2 million on EU back from your cron stones. However, they're just not the best. And generally, it's okay to use cron stones in this category, the second category, even if it's not the best, especially if you're looking to save time. And I'll do this a lot for that time factor. Like, the amount of time that doing certain things with cron stones saves you is absolutely tremendous, and obviously time is money. So I'm okay with certain things, even though they might not be the best value for your cron stones. The time and effort that you save is going to make it worth it. But then there's the third category, and this is one that a lot of people really like to, or I would advise you highly stay out of this category here. And this is just like, do not use your cron stones on these items. You are going to get below your expected value. You're going to make less than 1 million back per cron stone on NA, less than 2 million back on EU. There's more things in this category on the EU server, by the way, because obviously your cron stones are more expensive, so there's less items that you can use them on in order to make profit. But regardless on NA or EU, this is the category that you absolutely want to stay away from. And a great example of this is like your try to tet boss gear attempts. This is a category that I would absolutely avoid using cron stones on. I know it might be tempting because the chances to go from try to tet are very, very low, but keep in mind that try to tet attempts, whether it's boss gear or any try to tets, has a very, very big range of fail stack levels that you're going to need to get across in order to be able to start your pen attempts. So, you know, like duo, pry to duo and duo to try, like you're only doing like the fail stack levels 30 to 40 and 40 to 50. But when it comes to try to tet, you have to get all the way from like 50 to basically close to 100. You've got a lot of fails that you need in order to reach on some item. It doesn't have to be boss gear necessarily, but a lot of fails you're going to have to eventually need in order to get that fail stack to do your pen attempts. And you completely give up this opportunity when you cron. When you cron, you no longer gain fail stack levels, and a lot of people get really frustrated that the chances to actually succeed try to tet are really low compared to like pry to duo and duo to try, and they focus on that really low chance to succeed, and they don't think about how, well, you're going to need to build up fail stacks for pen attempts anyway. Fail stacks are very valuable, especially 100 stacks. I won't say like super particulars, but for 100 stacks, it's pretty commonly known that the value is going to range anywhere from like 750 million to 1.5 billion or so silver, in that general ballpark. So the stacks are very valuable. You're going to need to build them up. And when you cron your try to tet, you completely give up your opportunity in order to build up those fail stacks. On top of that, the actual cost of cron stones, you know, you still have to eat a stack in order to actually hit a success. Like, the math works really against you in so many different ways that it is by far the worst option to use your cron stones on when it comes to boss gear. Like, duo to try is going to be better, and I'm not really a huge fan of that either. You know, pen attempts are obviously going to be a whole different discussion there, but that's also going to be much better than try to tet. So misusing your cron stones, especially on boss gear, a major mistake that I see a ton of people make. And if you're on the EU server, be especially careful with this, because your cron stones are considered to be more valuable due to less whales and less costumes. You have to be even more careful than people on NA. So that's the second really big mistake that I see pop up quite a bit. And now let's talk about the third one, and I'm actually at the blacksmith vendor for this, because this is a mistake with fail stacking that a lot of of people like to, unfortunately, get into the habit of due to laziness. And if you're a casual enhancer, if you're not really doing this for profit, it's fine. Like, this one is not as big of a deal if you don't really enhance a lot. However, if you plan on enhancing a lot in the future, or you're doing this for profit, this is something you need to be extremely careful with, and that is your Blacksmith Books. And I'll tell you, there are 4 different Blacksmith Books that you can buy from the Blacksmith, the 20 ones, which can book a fail stack up to 20, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And generally, when you do use your Blacksmith Books, you want to use the highest, you want to use it on the highest fail stack that that book can do. So you would want to use like 50 stacks for the 50s, 40 stacks for the 40s, 30s for the 30s, 20s for the 20s. But I wanted to say it in reverse order because I'll just start off by saying, be very careful with the first couple here. And I'll tell you right now that the 20 books are basically never going to be worth it. Unless you're not really worried about profit, if you're just looking to get some convenience out of this and you really need a book, a 20 stack, don't get into the habit of doing this because it is going to completely kill your opportunity to make profit from enhancing, because at a cost of 1 million per Blacksmith book, I'll tell you right now, I'll show you guys the chart here for the cost in order to build fail stacks up to level 30, of course. I don't really reveal numbers too much higher than that in extreme detail. Valuable information to know, of course. But up to 30, here it is. You guys can see that the cost to make a 20 stack is about 4.2 million silver, with the current price of armor stones and weapon stones at about 120,000 each. So obviously, if they're more expensive when you're watching this video, you can adjust that yourself. But you're looking at about 4 million in order to make a 20 stack. And now if you're all of a sudden paying 1 million silver just to book that 20 stack, well, guess what you just did? You just added 25% additional costs just to be able to book your 20 stack. And that is going to completely kill your ability to make profit from enhancing. You cannot be paying an extra 25% to book your 20 stacks. So, you know, occasionally it's fine. If you're casual enhancing, it's fine. If you're not doing this for profit, it's okay. If you don't work on a lot of items, it's okay. But if you do this for profit or you do this a lot, you're going to want to stay out of the habit of booking those low stacks. So my general rule of thumb is I always stay away from 20 books. I will basically never use these. Like, if I ever have a 20 stack Valks, it's probably from an event or something else. It wasn't from myself. Moving on to the 30s, I generally try to stay away from these as well. However, it does become a bit better. If we go back to the actual chart here, you guys can see the cost to make a 30 stack is about 10.5 million silver or so. You know, we'll say 10 to 11 million. So now, instead of paying 25% of the cost, it's 1.5 million silver to book it, so you're paying closer to like 15%. So, you know, it's better. However, that's still pretty high. Like, that's a big cost that you're adding to your enhancing that you don't necessarily need to. Like, that's basically the market tax right there, right? 15% with the value pack. The market tax is a really big deal. If there was no market tax, everyone would be able to make big money from enhancing, and the market tax is going to be a big killer of profits for a lot of people. So you're just adding essentially another market tax. You're adding another 15% that you don't really need to. And I will occasionally use 30 books in an emergency if I really need the stacks, or like, you know, I know that I'm going to need extras, but I try not to use more than a couple of these. I don't get into the habit of using them because 15% is still really high. Now, it's not until we get to like the 40 and the 50 books where I'm okay with using these, because the value of a 40 stack and the value of a 50 stack, you know, when you actually calculate the value of these fail stacks, 40 and 50, the cost of the book of 2 and 3 million silver respectively is going to be pretty low compared to the value of the stack. Like, for a 40 stack, 2 million silver is only going to be like around, you know, 5% of the value or so of the stack. And then for a 50 stack, you're looking at even less. You're looking at maybe like 3 to 4% of the value of the fail stack is going to be spent on the Blacksmith Secret book in order to book it, and the convenience is going to be absolutely huge. And my general rule of thumb, what I try to do is I really never like to book my fail stacks except for 50. And 50 is a very big level for many different reasons. It's a level that a lot of people start their TET attempts on. So you're going try to TET for things like boss gear. Even if you don't start off with boss gear, it's generally the level that a lot of people start their TET attempts at. And it's also the very last level that you can book something at the blacksmith for silver. If you want to book anything up to 100 fail stacks, unfortunately, you have to end up getting the Pearl Shop books, and obviously that's not sustainable. Unless you're a super whale, you don't really want to be buying those unless it's like an actual emergency. So I do have a couple of them for like emergencies, basically, like if I really need to, or something crazy happened, or I ran into some really weird luck where I can't really fix it any other way. But the 50 books, I will without a doubt, book my 50 stacks and not feel bad about it. And if you actually take a look and see here, that basically the only thing that I really keep, you know, using my books on is literally 50 stacks. So I have a bunch of those. Obviously, I have a bunch of alts as well, but my alts, I try to keep those for fail stacks that are higher than level 50 because, again, you can't end up using silver to book those. So that was a lot of info and a lot of detail, but basically just be careful with those lower books. You lose a lot of potential. You know, you just lose so much paying to book the stack compared to what it costs to make it. So it's not really going to be worth it unless you're a casual or you don't really do it a whole lot. So those are 3 really big mistakes I see in the Twitch chat. All day I'm enhancing. We basically, you know, the stream is like 75 to 90% enhancing, and I see a lot of people ask questions, and I try my best to help people out. Obviously, there's some things that I can't talk about, but I do my best. These are the things that I see pretty commonly, like usually once a day or so, maybe even more, I'll see these kind of topics brought up. So I wanted to put this out there as some of the common mistakes that I see people make, and hopefully this benefited you guys and it helps out. And if you guys enjoyed, and if you are interested in, of course, looking at all the enhancing sessions today, we had our best day ever. I'm not going to spoil anything. It was a very good day, and those of you guys who watch the stream know exactly why. But every single day, 10, 20 plus billion silver of enhancing nonstop. We do 10 to 20 to 30 pen attempts a day. We're at almost 500 pen attempts. It's pretty crazy. So YouTube, I like to keep it informational and, you know, guides, tutorials, that sort of stuff. Twitch is all about having fun, enhancing, slamming items, and getting the big stuff. So if you're interested in that, check it out, twitch.tv/salt. But if not, thanks for watching, everyone. Take care, and until next time.